What is up, guys? Welcome back. You already know. What is up, guys? Today, what is up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. What is up, guys? Today we're doing a monstrous motive, the murder of Jessica Padgett. Crime time. Shout out to this channel. Fair use.
"33-year-old Jessica Padgett lived in Northampton County, Pennsylvania, with her husband Micah and 3 children. She and Micah had been together for almost a decade and married for 2 months. Jessica's mother Donnell said that had been together in Pennsylvania with her husband Micah and 3 children. She and Micah had been together for almost a decade and married for 2 months. Jessica's mother Donnell said that her daughter and Micah were always a strong and united team even through the tough times. Being a mum to 3 young kids definitely kept her on her toes, as did her job. Friends said Jessica was born to be a mother and just be around children in general. She trained in early childhood development and started working at ewww childcare as a daycare assistant.
Usually this is where it gets bad.
On November 21st, 2014, Micah was out the door early as usual to get to his construction job, and Jessica was soon up herself getting ready for a shift at the nursery. After dropping her 2 oldest children at school, she and her 2-year-old son arrived at ewww at 8:30 a.m. It was soon time for Jessica's lunch break. She needed to get some things faxed, but the office machine was broken, so she was using her lunch break to go to her mum and stepdad's house, which was just a few minutes' drive away. Jessica had a close relationship with her mum Donnell and stepdad Gregory, even working a second job at Gregory's business, Distinctive Fencing, which operated just next door to his and Donnell's house. It would be a quick trip there and back, only about 4 miles, and she wouldn't have a reason to stay and chat. Her stepdad would likely be working and her mum was away in Florida. But to her colleagues' concern, the always prompt Jessica was late back. A couple of hours then passed and Micah got a call from the daycare. He was none the wiser. He made a coffee that morning, kissed her and the kids goodbye, and left before anyone was awake. Jessica had called him briefly as she was on her way to her mother's house, but he said everything seemed as normal as ever. She was a little rushed, but her usual chatty self nonetheless. Her phone was ringing but going to voicemail, and her 2-year-old son was now at the daycare centre by himself. Something was clearly very wrong. Donnell said she had called her daughter's phone over 100 times back to back.
Can't even lie to you, I'll be back.
Wrong was now at the daycare centre by himself. Something was clearly very wrong. Donnell said she had called her daughter's phone over 100 times back to back. Every time she got the voicemail, she hung up and called again. She then booked the first flight back home. Although Jessica had been on her way to use her stepfather's fax machine, he said he hadn't seen her or heard from her either. He had been out fixing his truck. The police arrived at the nursery and started to push her details out to the media. She had a distinctive footprint tattoo on her shoulder and was last seen wearing a black sweatshirt and grey trousers with her hair in a ponytail. The search for 33-year-old Jessica Padgett was now on.
In the Lehigh Valley, concern is growing over the mysterious disappearance of a mother of 3. Jessica Padgett was last seen leaving her job at the ewww daycare in Northampton, Lehigh County. She was on the way to send a fax at the Distinctive Fence Company when she vanished. NBC 10 Lehigh Valley Bureau reporter Randy Gyllenhaal tells us what's being done to find her.
Across the Lehigh Valley, these missing persons flyers were popping up on street signs and storefronts. A newlywed young mother of 3 vanished suddenly. Now her family's searching for answers.
Her best friend Shauna said she was so content and genuinely happy lately. The fact she had disappeared immediately seemed ominous. It did not match the Jessica they knew. Soon, over 8,000 people were following her missing persons Facebook page, and the search parties were huge. Once her mom Danelle was back home, detectives went over to chat to her and Gregory. But this time, they wanted to know more about her relationship with Micah. A partner or ex-partner is typically where a lot of the investigations begin, but Danelle said there was no way he was involved. It hadn't even crossed her mind. She had been talking to him constantly, and he was as upset and worried as she was. But Gregory wasn't so sure. In fact, he had little nice to say about her husband at all. And for someone that had been in Jessica's life for 20 years, someone she called the second best dad she could have asked for, police had to take his opinion seriously. Gregory said he loved his stepdaughter, but felt sorry for her, calling her a loser magnet. He said she had always attracted the wrong guys, and he had never been keen on Micah. They asked Gregory if he knew what she was coming over to fax, but he didn't, and their machine had been playing up for a few days, so there would be no record of anything she did, unfortunately. While some of the team were looking into Micah's whereabouts that day, others were looking at her phone. They managed to track it down as it was pinging just a few miles from her workplace, and had been for hours. It was definitely stationary. Officers drove around and went past a shopping centre. Everything was now closed up, and the parking lot was dark and empty. But one car stood out. Outside a Dollar General store was Jessica's white car. It was unlocked, and her phone, purse, keys and cards were all inside. Her phone was still ringing as they opened the door. Jessica was 5'4", and the driver's seat seemed to be in the right place to match someone of her height.
Not that police are elaborating on at this point. They won't tell us how they think that Jessica's car ended up in a parking lot halfway between that daycare and the place she was going, her stepfather's place of business. The district attorney says that right now investigators are on high alert, that this is not a standard missing person case.
Her car had been picked up at an Exxon gas station camera at 12:56 p.m.
I see your messages, guys. Appreciate all the follows. Reacting to this video. Crime time, it's going to YouTube. Somebody's driving it or what?
Then at 1:10 p.m. her car came back into view going the opposite way. It swung into the gas station really fast and made a quick left turn out of the exit. Her car then pulled into the same parking lot area they found it in at 1:15 p.m. They couldn't tell who got out of the driver's seat, but they knew it was not Jessica. Whoever it was very tall and wearing light-coloured clothes. They stood next to the car for a moment, squatting down for a few seconds, and detectives felt sure they were moving the seat forward to make it look like Jessica was the driver. After everything Gregory had said, they had to wonder if it was Micah. His height was definitely a match, but Micah had an alibi, and he was at work all day, and everyone there could confirm that. The driver then walked off down an alley just next to the parking area. They were alone, and no one else was nearby either. A minute or so later, a small white truck came speeding back down the road next to the alley, and back down the same street next to the gas station. Investigators sent the footage off to be analysed further and sharpened up, hoping for a number plate. You couldn't walk past a street lamp or shop window without seeing Jessica's missing persons poster, but apart from her car, nothing else was turning up. Donnell was not coping well at all, but her husband Gregory was there to support everyone, assuring her that they would find her soon. The footage of the white truck leaving the parking area was soon back in the police's hands, and experts had found an interesting detail. Several of the officers stared at the footage for a moment, before suddenly realising what they were looking at. The truck had some distinctive markings on the side. These matched Gregory Graff's truck, Jessica's stepfather. They re-interviewed Gregory, but he said it was totally coincidental. He had parked there a few hours before to get some repairs done on it, and then he had stopped for food at the Exxon gas station. But it was clear from the footage, he drove right past the gas station. Gregory said when he got home, his employees were floating around the house grabbing their payslips, but there was no sign that Jessica had been there at all. His employees said that this was true, and he had been chatty and asking them about their weekend plans. Police just didn't know what to think anymore. His story did make sense, but something about him was making them question everything. Investigators went back to his and Donnell's house to take another look around. This time they were focused way more on his business in the building next door. The fax machine he claimed was not working was actually working perfectly, and they managed to recover the fax that Jessica had sent. It was a health insurance policy, time-stamped at 1:04 p.m, and this confirmed she had definitely been in the house. Downstairs in the basement, they found a bloody tissue in the bin. They also found some blood on one of the mattresses and the carpet. Gregory said he was an avid hunter, so it had probably been something to do with that. He then went upstairs saying he needed a cigarette, muttering that he was sad that he wouldn't be able to see his dogs anymore. Officers said they knew he was about to admit to whatever it was he had done, but they had no idea it would be such a twisted story. As he was led out of the house, Donnell screamed at him to tell her where her daughter was. That was the last time she spoke to him.
What do you do, self-delete?
Major development in the search for a missing woman in our area. The DA is now calling the disappearance a criminal case.
Gregory admitted to the police that he had lured Jessica into his house, claiming he needed help with his computer. As she needed to use the fax machine anyway, she was happy to go over. At 1:04 p.m, as Jessica sat by the fax machine, with her back to her stepfather, he grabbed a gun and shot her in the back of the head. He then dragged her into a bedroom and ran out to her car. He went and parked it outside of the Dollar General store before moving the seat forward and returning home in his truck. His employees then arrived for their payslips, collecting them and chatting about their weekend, as Jessica lay dead in the back room. After everyone had gone, Gregory went into the bedroom and set up 2 cameras and filmed himself raping her dead body. They found 8 videos on his computer of him violating her, saying vile things as he was doing so, as her head was covered with a plastic bag. Finally, after a 5-day search, police found Jessica's body buried behind Gregory's shed. She was partially covered over with some leaves.
Well, breaking news right now, and it is tragic news from Northampton County. A woman who has been missing since last week has now been found dead.
Eyewitness News reporter Matt Rivers is live in Easton tonight with breaking details. Matt.
Chris and Jessica, it was just moments ago that Northampton County District Attorney John Morganelli laid out the case against 53-year-old Gregory Graff, the stepfather of that missing woman, 33-year-old Jessica Padgett. It was on Friday that officials say Padgett went to the home of Graff to send a fax, and that's where a confrontation occurred.
During an interview with the investigators, he did admit that he intentionally and knowingly caused the death of the victim at his home. He related that he utilized a firearm to cause the victim's death, and that he then took the victim's body and disposed of it on his property.
We're devastated by the loss of Jessica. She was a beautiful, vibrant young woman who was beloved by her family and friends. The world shines less bright today.
It's unreal. You know, what he did is kind of unspeakable, unforgivable.
And police say that Gregory Graff is in the process of being arraigned as we speak. The district attorney says this case could become a capital murder case if during the course of an autopsy it is discovered that a sexual assault did in fact take place during the course of Jessica Padgett's murder.
They felt strongly that the crime may have been premeditated given the fact he had asked her to come over, the fact Jessica's mother was out of town, and the location he had parked his truck. Gregory later said that the motive for killing her was purely to sexually abuse her corpse. He said he had asked her to come over after watching a lot of pornography and buying some sex toys in town. He showed no remorse at all, adding he wished he had chosen his neighbour as a victim instead of Jessica. This was the same man that Jessica had posted about on her Facebook page on Father's Day, saying, "Two dads, and I love both of mine very much." What happened was so depraved, and after hearing all of the details about what her husband had done, Donnell said she just sat in the corner of the room crying, trying to work everything out in her head, something which was unfathomable and impossible to do.
53-year-old Gregory Graff on Covered Bridge Road in Allen Township. Tonight, Graff is in state police custody, charged with criminal homicide. Police say Graff has admitted to police that he killed Padgett, a mother of 3. Police say Graff took part in the volunteer searches for his missing stepdaughter, but his statements to police never added up, and early on the investigation focused on him. Police searched his home yesterday. Graff was brought in today, and police say he gave them indications as to where Padgett's body might be.
My name is John Morganelli, District Attorney for Northampton County. We're here today regarding the disappearance of Jessica Lynn Padgett. The investigation in this case by the state police, I will say early on, focused on Mr. Graff because of inconsistent statements that he was giving with respect to his activities that day. It did not correspond with the investigation information that was being developed by state police. On Monday, when I was there meeting with the investigators who did an excellent job on this case, I was informed of some of these inconsistencies, and further inconsistencies were developed over the next 48 hours. And during an interview with the investigators, he did admit that he intentionally and knowingly caused the death of the victim at his home. He related that he utilized a firearm to cause the victim's death, and that he then took the victim's body and disposed of it on his property. He, as I indicated, has now been charged. He's in custody of the Pennsylvania State Police. There's definitely a sex angle to this crime. That is still being developed in terms of the particular nature of it. But based on what the investigators have learned, there's clearly some motive that involves a sexual assault, I would call it.
There was no indication that she had any type of relationship with him that was other than, congenial or good. She had worked for him at some point and had access to his house.
An online fundraiser for Jessica's children received nearly 300 donations in just over a week, totaling over $11,000. It was soon at $20,000. The prosecutor said under Pennsylvania law, a murder in preparation of a felony is an aggravating factor that allows prosecutors to pursue capital charges. Rape rises to that level, but the sexual desecration of a corpse does not. This meant that they would be unable to seek the death penalty as the sexual abuse occurred after and not before she was killed. Despite his admissions, Gregory pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, and his lawyer was seeking a third-degree murder conviction, even pushing for an insanity plea. The prosecution were, of course, wanting a first-degree murder conviction. Jury members cried as they watched the videos found on his computer and were so unsettled by the closing statements they could barely look at his defense attorney. The jury foreman, David, said, "It's something I'll never forget. Anyone who says it didn't bother them is a liar or evil." When David asked for a show of hands, everyone shot up, and just 6 minutes later, they returned their verdict. "It took longer to sign the papers than it did to hold the vote," he said. Gregory Graff was found guilty of first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. He was sentenced to a mandatory life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jessica's sister Christy looked at Gregory and said, I hope you fear for your life every day and feel some sort of remorse one day. And that day when you meet your maker and you are banished to hell for eternity, I hope maybe then you'll know what you took from us and how we felt that day. Gregory dabbed his eyes with a tissue and Christy said, "You're pretty good at faking it. What I've learned from this trial is that even now, you don't regret it. You don't even care. You could have just taken your punishment, but you decided to take us through this excruciating trial, making us relive the nightmare." Gregory said he was sorry for what he had done before leaving the courtroom.
Nah, that's crazy.
Jessica's mum, Donnell, had filed for divorce, but Gregory was dragging his heels with this. He said he was not happy with the financial terms of the divorce and refused to sign the documents, allowing their estate to be divvied up. He also filed an appeal for a second trial, arguing his lawyer did not do a good enough job the first time. Gregory said he was high on drugs when he got into an argument with Jessica and blacked out, not remembering anything that had happened. Jessica's sister Christy thought the crime deserved the death sentence, but as we know, the prosecution didn't have any of the aggravating circumstances needed to pursue the death penalty. She started fighting for a new law that would make desecration or mutilation of a corpse during a homicide an aggravating factor that could be considered for a death penalty prosecution. For Jessica to be murdered at the hands of someone she adored and trusted so much was devastating in and of itself, but the way he degraded and violated her body after death simply made it inhumane. Donnell said she feels like she's constantly surrounded by broken glass. Jessica's husband Micah said he was so overwhelmed seeing how many came out to search for her. Through the darkest times, you're able to see there are good people out there. That's pretty much the only thing that kept us from completely falling apart. She was the most wonderful person I have ever met in my life. It's so heartbreaking to know that this is now our forever.
Just trying to get through it together, there's no one person that took a hit on this. We all did. The entire community did. So the only thing we can do is help each other, pick each other up, and just try to keep on moving forward. I mean, you just have to just read about it a little bit and you see it impacted not just a family but an entire community, even not even Northampton, not even Whitehall, but just out of state, just everywhere and everybody. It's just everyone that she ever talked to or ever touched or ever had contact with. That she was a beautiful person. She was my best friend. She was the mother of my children. She was my wife. She's the only girl I've ever loved. It's just one of those. It's hard sometimes because, as a parent, you don't want your children to be sad and upset, but in the other chance, you want them to remember. So it's just, every now and then you just sit back and you talk and you remember and you tell stories. I have my daughter's about her size, so now she's wearing her clothing, you know what I mean? So every day I get to watch her jump down the steps wearing a t-shirt or a sweatshirt that I used to see her wear every single day, or a pair of pants and stuff. And it is nice. It really is. It's nice seeing that. Every now and then it's like, hey, I remember her wearing that. Those are some of the good positive things that I get to experience every day at least.
Tough. It's a video.